Kellyanne Conway joins us now, former senior counselor to President Trump, author of the book, Here's the Deal. Kellyanne, welcome, and a Fox News contributor, of course. Welcome back, Kellyanne.
Hey, Brian, thank you. What's cooking today?
Yeah, and by the way, I didn't know you had your podcast rolling. I forgot. The Campaign Managers with Kellyanne Conway and David Plouffe. First off, Kellyanne, I love that the president, I think it's good for the country for the president to go into Detroit. He's going to be planning to go to Philadelphia. I love that he went to the South Bronx and just said, what do you need? What's going on? I want to make some inroads. I'd love to get your vote. So few Republicans are asking for the vote in urban environments.
It's so true. They always go for the 50% plus one calculation, Brian, and that's a mistake. What do I mean? They always say, well, what groups can I get the majority with? You need to improve the margins of the typical Republican to actually win. So I'm going to name 5 groups for you that President Trump does not need to get anywhere near 50% among them and still become the next president of the United States. African Americans, Hispanics, young people, labor union households, some groups, well, women overall. He doesn't need 50% of any of those groups. He just needs to do much better than Republicans typically do, number one. And number two, he needs to erode, I think capture that erosion, that natural migration and attrition away from Joe Biden and the Democratic Party among those constituencies. And people say, well, women are going to vote for Biden. Guess what? The real gender gap is Joe Biden's gender gap among men. It's about 18% difference in some of the national polls. And in some of the swing states, like the Iowa poll yesterday that shows Donald Trump beating Joe Biden by 18 points in Iowa, Brian, a state that Obama-Biden carried twice, that is clearly in the red camp now. Statewide officials, congressional seats, and, of course, the presidency. Why is this important? Because Joe Biden he's making the gender gap among men for the Democratic Party a complete cavernous abyss. They just don't know how to speak to working America. They don't know how to get their heads out of the elites, out of the fundraisers in Hollywood, out of Obama escorting him off the stage, out of his friends in the tech community and the media community and the Hollywood community. They simply don't know how to go talk to America. I don't think we're very far removed from President Obama's famous statement that the people are clinging to their God, their guns, their Bibles. Yeah. You've got Joe Biden basically exacting an entire presidency that sounds like Hillary Clinton's deplorable, irredeemable comments. They look down on so much of America, and those Americans, whether in the South Bronx or Wildwood, New Jersey, or Detroit, Michigan, they see Donald Trump not just speak up and put up, and they see him show up. And I think that's the most important thing. You've got to show up in these communities so that they feel. And by the way, this is something people missed in 2016, and it's happening again for Trump. When Donald Trump goes into the South Bronx or Detroit, I'm telling you the headlines the day before, day of, and day after, or days after, Brian, talk about that in a very factual way. Trump to Detroit, I see you. Or Trump to black community, black church, I'm with you, I hear you. When you get the headlines like that, just generic factual headlines, people read that and say, wow, he literally went there. He literally went there, a place where Republicans think that they shouldn't go.
Right. And by the way, the candidate can learn something, too. They have one image of what it's like in a certain city. They can't see every city in every state. And they say, wow, when I left, I got a totally different opinion about what the city needs after talking to people. You become a better politician, a better leader. So just look at the numbers. They say, the polls show, Joe Biden's approval within the black community is down to 70%, down from 86% in 2020. Trump has cut into Biden's coalition, tripling his support for black voters over the last 4 years from 7% now to 21%. What does 21%, if these polls convert to votes, what does that do for the result of this election?
It's game over. If President Trump were to get 21% of the black vote, if he were to get 40% of the Hispanic vote, if he were to get 47% of the female vote, if he were to get 38% of the young vote, it's over. And why is that? Because you were talking about the 7 swing states, Brian, where the more racially diverse ones, Georgia, Arizona, Nevada, for example, is where Trump's real strength right now against Biden lies. Biden's campaign, believe it or not, here's the greatest irony of the day, but the old rich white guy is looking for old rich white guys and gals to vote for him. In states like Wisconsin, which is over 80% white only. In states like Michigan and Pennsylvania, which is over 75% white only in the population. So the greatest irony for the party of Barack Obama and AOC and Hakeem Jeffries and Kamala Harris is that Joe Biden is stuck trying to get more of the white vote to actually eke out a second term. So Trump eats into that. Again, folks, he doesn't need to get 50%. He doesn't need anywhere near it. He gets 21, 22, 25% of the black vote, and this is over. Now, many of them are they're people. They're right now. The voters are the definers are people who maybe didn't vote in 2022, maybe voted in 2020, but they're not as reliable a voting bloc by their own reporting. And frankly, some of them weren't eligible to vote. They're 18 to 25, so they weren't eligible to vote in 2016, and some of them 2020. So they could be first-time voters that he's bringing into the party. Also, if you get a first-time voter who is Hispanic or African American, and they're voting for Trump the first time they're ever voting in a presidential election, they may stick with the Republican Party for decades to come. Now, here's my caveat, and here's my message. Senate candidates, Republican House candidates, sharpen it up. You are underperforming President Trump, particularly our Senate candidates in Ohio, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, Nevada, Montana. We are underperforming President Trump in all these polls. You can't rely only on his reach, on his expanding his map, on the energy and enthusiasm that he's generating. They've got to do what he does. They've got to be not a generic Republican, losing to incumbent, well-known Democrats. They've got to become very well-defined Republicans and center-right conservative candidates who are taking on the left, are making those senators, Brian, eat and own all of Biden's failings and flailings.
I hear you. Kellyanne, I want you to hear, so the front story in Politico was something we already kind of got a taste of Monday, and that is they're going to go after convicted felon Donald Trump. Listen.
This election is between a convicted criminal who's only out for himself and a president who's fighting for your family.
They tested this, and they're going to hit him with it hard. Biden's going to bring it up at the debate next week. What's your counter?
The counter is, it sounds like they were even abandoning this because lately they were trying to go to Donald Trump's mental acuity, which is a joke when you're running against Joe Biden. It's a joke also if you see this man's energy and the fact that Trump just keeps going and he's got something big on his schedule every day. I looked at the trial of Donald Trump and said, this guy is just not an indoor cat. You know, now he's back out, he's unleashed, he's in his natural environment. And the debates are also natural habitat. I'm surprised that the Biden people are going to convicted felon and going so early. To me, it's kind of like it should be a last-ditch attempt. Also, everybody knows that. It hasn't really moved the polling. And it's a crazy thing to say when your son Hunter just was convicted of 3 felonies in a case that actually produced evidence and witnesses that were terrible for his case. And he faces another case in California. He's going to be sentenced in that case. So I'm a little surprised they'd, quote, go there. And I think it's the wrong way to approach Donald Trump.
Well, that's true. But if the president turns around and says, Hunter Biden got convicted, that's not what he wants. He wants to say, Hunter Biden got convicted doing your dirty work, and that's going to be exposed in Los Angeles. Right. Is that the counter?
That's the key here, that it's the Biden crime family. It's the corruption in the Biden family that James Comer and others have already uncovered. Brian, speaking of debates, it's on the presidential debate stage in 2020 where Joe Biden first lied about Hunter's laptop, lied about those 51 so-called.
Should Trump bring that up and call him out and make him apologize?
Yes, and say, Joe, we can't even expect you to tell the truth tonight because the last time you and I were on the stage, you lied. You lied to the American people. You lied about Hunter's laptop, which now your own Department of Justice has said was real because they're investigating crimes, potential crimes based on the content of that laptop. You lied about these 51 so-called national security experts and Russian disinformation. Apologize to America and assure us that tonight you won't lie. And then President Trump should just let Biden speak, because the man can't do it. CNN, Tapper, Bash, the whole lot of them, they think they're doing this public service, this noble service by muting Donald Trump's mic. Go ahead and do that because you know what? I want Joe Biden to speak. I want that man to stand at a podium for 90 minutes without a teleprompter and without his doctor next to him, pumping him up with whatever, because he can't do it. And we all know that. So, yes, he should call him out on that.
I'm fascinated. We got to talk again right before the debate next week. But Kellyanne, I want to get you to this. I could not believe the press secretary and others are blaming selected editing and misperception of the president wandering off of the G7, freezing on the stage with Barack Obama, and seemingly to freeze during the Juneteenth celebration. Listen to the explanation, cut one.
You all have called this the cheap fakes video, and that's exactly what they are. They are cheap fakes video. They are done in bad faith. And some of your news organization have been very clear, have stressed that these the right-wing critics of the president have a credibility problem because of the fact checkers have repeatedly caught them pushing misinformation, disinformation.
So they're saying what we're seeing is fake.
I know. I've been saying this for 3.5 years. I'm going to say it again. This election comes down to a couple of things. Chief among them, Brian, is that if we believe what the Democrats say to us rather than what we see with our own eyes, then they win. They want you to deny what you actually see. And listen, this may have worked when Joe Biden was in the basement and we only saw him like once a week in a gymnasium with those 12 weird circles and chairs in them. This doesn't work when you're the President of the United States, Commander-in-Chief, and we can see you live, raw, uncut, and unfiltered, being guided by Giorgia Meloni of Italy, being guided by Barack Obama, being guided by your wife, not knowing, shaking hands with the air, literally freezing. I mean, unless they have an AI-generated Biden in the can, I don't know how they're going to do this. James Carville is saying he wouldn't be surprised. He wouldn't, bet on Trump appearing at the next week's debate. He should be a no-show. Are you kidding? It's Biden who should get a doctor's note and say the dog ate my homework, the dog ate my debate prep. Because what in the world is Joe Biden going to do on that stage? Even when he's reading from a teleprompter, he fumbles and stumbles and mumbles and bumbles. So what is he going to do with no notes, no net, no staffers, no physical assistance to guide him around? And look, I think it's amazing that we saw this poll from NPR, PBS over the weekend that if everybody in this country who's eligible to vote voted, Trump would win. Because what have the Democrats been peddling for years? Hillary Clinton's still obsessed with saying it, loser she is, that, oh, my God, well, we win the popular vote. Her husband got 43% of the vote, everybody, 43 in 1992, and became a two-term president. Go check it out. But he got 68.8% of the electoral votes. Why is this relevant? Because now the polling by the mainstream media that Karine Jean-Pierre thinks are their friends, their polling is the one showing now Donald Trump is doing better among the popular vote. Not even that it matters, but it shows you that they're desperate. And this party, the Democratic Party, should have swapped out Biden and Harris a year and a half ago. Shame on them for not doing it. I look forward to whatever octogenarian the Democrats have next for 2028. I don't want to hear it's somebody in their 40s or 50s, because apparently they're telling us the best kind of president to have is one that can't speak.
But the thing is, Kellyanne, remember when Mitch McConnell hit his head and he froze twice in public? Not one person tried to deny. No one denied. They just said, I hope he's okay. Right? Both sides. So you hope he's okay, man. He's not okay. He wasn't okay. He seems to be better now. So when this president freezes, don't deny that we're seeing it or accuse me or anybody else of manipulating the video. You watch this thing. Barack Obama grabbed his wrist, pulled him, and then put his hand on his back. I didn't do that. You didn't do that. But you understand sometimes you're in a crisis. Everyone has different ways of handling a crisis. Can you talk about this way of handling a crisis?
It's terrible because they're showing us that they're worried. And Karine Jean-Pierre is wrong to tell the press corps of all people that these are deep fakes. These are deep fakes. The press corps travels with Joe Biden. They go abroad with him. They watch him in action. Literally, that's two words, inaction. They watch his inaction in action. So that's the worst group to try to sell these lies to. And she's got to stop lying from the podium. It's really odious and onerous, and it's just wrong that she would. She should not be lying to the American people from the podium. She can talk about Donald Trump all day long. That seems to be their strategy. She can pretend that the CHIPS Act is the greatest accomplishment ever, and that the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan, that even the generals and Joe Lieberman and folks like that were against, that was all great. She could pretend Kamala Harris is competent and confident and not a cackler and an invader and hasn't turned the vice presidency of the United States into a no-show job. There's usually nothing on her public schedule of any kind of note. She's my neighbor here in Washington. I mean, her motorcade is never in my way. I'm not even sure when she works and where she works. She can do all those things. But don't lie to us about what we see with our own two eyes. And everybody in this country, Brian, knows someone or knows someone who knows someone who's had an elderly relative who's just lost a couple steps. Paul Ryan said it last week on Fox News Channel. This is not the Joe Biden I debated in 2012 is what he said. He's totally different. Senators say that. Okay, so that's fine. But give the man grace and pity, not a second term as president of the United States at a very dangerous time.
And
this guy got us into 2 new wars.
Right. And don't insult us by pointing it out. Kellyanne, great stuff. Appreciate it. Check out her podcast, The Campaign Managers with Kellyanne and David Plouffe. Go get him, Kelly.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.